So maybe let's get started. I'm delighted to introduce our panel here. We've got four leaders in procurement who are going to take their time to share their thoughts and their ideas around this topic of encouraging an inclusive culture and encouraging women to be the best they can be within the procurement environment. And we've got people from different sectors, which is always a very interesting aspect, I think, for me in any panel discussion. So just to quickly introduce the people, I'm sure they'll bring their experience to life as we go through the discussions. We got Maha Bouzaid from Ericsson. She's the Vice President and Head of Sourcing, particularly for the Middle East and Africa region. So welcome to you. So we've got a telecoms experience and background that comes with that. We've got Melinda Johnson, who's the Commercial Director of the Department of Health and Social Care. So UK, central government, and I know Melinda had a number of roles within central government over a number of years, but a real champion for gender equality, if you like, across that piece. So welcome to you. We've got Claire Jones, who's the Group Procurement Director at Mace. Mace is a construction company, global construction company. So I think Claire's bringing a very different perspective there from that aspect of construction. And also delighted to welcome Conception Rebo, who's Head of Procurement for Balfour Beatty. So again, construction, a contractor, and a very different perspective that all four of you bring. So welcome to you all. I'm Duncan Brock. I'm a Group Director at SIPS and delighted to chair this session. So just to kick off, I've actually got a few stats that we managed to pull together from a recent sort of membership database that we had. Because one of the questions we had was, okay, so what is the current makeup of SIPS members between male and female? And so we looked at our database, and it was interesting. There is still a predominance here of more male than female across all the regions, but not a significant difference. The differences on this slide, I think, are talking about that at a senior level, CPO level, senior manager level, where clearly there's a stronger percentage there of male versus female as we go through. So that's across all regions. What was interesting, I think, is when you then look at it from a perspective of UK and then the other regions. So in the UK, pretty balanced. I think, you know, when you look at it from our perspective, pretty balanced between male and female, not a significant difference there. I think when we do our graduation ceremonies, I think it's also very interesting there that we see a pretty good balance between the two. Australia and New Zealand, again, pretty balanced between the two, but at the senior level, particularly CPO level, predominance towards male than female. Middle East region, much stronger bias towards male than female. Maybe that's something, Mahak, we can come back to with you, particularly in that sort of perspective, but a much stronger element there towards male. And South Africa, pretty balanced, but actually interesting in the South Africa, this is out of our database, at a senior level, stronger with a female and more percentage there than male. So I don't know whether that's conclusive or not, but I think it's interesting to sort of set the context really for what we're seeing coming through. And maybe we could sort of kick off with a question here about the gender diversity that's in here in procurement, and the differences across sectors and maybe across regions, and why do you think there are some of those barriers there? And Maham, I'm going to come to you first, if I may, on that. I mean, what's your perspective on that?
Thank you, Duncan. And I can say that the numbers that you actually showed were quite positive. Actually, it doesn't look as good elsewhere. I would say across procurement, or I would say in general other functions and different sectors. I worked in the ICT industry in information and communication technology, and obviously there the number of women are much less. If you look at the global workforce, women represent 40%. But if you look at the number of women who are actually Fortune 500 CEOs, it's only 4.6% globally. So, and it's obvious that the higher up the ladder you climb, the less women you actually see. And the question is, what is the reason for that? I think we have in the recent years the shift has, or let's say in the past maybe 20 years, willingness has really improved in terms of women wanting to climb up the ladder and wanting to progress in their careers and getting out of their homes, basically from being really much more having a larger responsibility at home to also have a larger responsibility in the workforce. And so we don't have an issue of non-willingness really, but I would say that the main factors that are still there today and the real blockers are, number one, I would say, is that women are still very hesitant to advocate themselves or ask for what they want. They don't really raise their hand, they don't lean forward as much as men do. I think also women in general have more limited access to networks and sponsors, and also less female role models to look up to and be guided by when it comes to progressing in their careers. We have also a tendency when it comes to leadership that women face a double bind of being either capable or liked, but not both at the same time. That's always a balance that we have to strike. It's really difficult. And then when you talk about Middle East and Africa specifically, I would say in our region, women tend to have higher family commitments. It's part of the values and it's deeply entrenched in the culture, maybe compared to Europe or other countries in the world. So there are several things. I want to give an opportunity for my colleagues to talk as well. But I would say, as I said, in the ICT industry, we have a larger challenge really to bring in women, and I've mentioned some of them at least that I see.
Oh, that's great, thank you. Oh, we've got feedback there. We do have some feedback there. Let me just mute myself. Is that any better? Yes, it is. A little bit better. So maybe we've got to have, if all of you could just mute yourself initially, that might help me, and then we can then bring you into discussion. So just to maybe build on that, Neha. I mean, you talked there about telecoms and IT having a challenge, and you highlighted some of the challenges there. I mean, can those challenges be overcome? I suppose the question is, are the barriers there, are the significant barriers there that need to be overcome? And maybe, I mean, open now to others giving a perspective on that. I mean, what sort of barriers are there? Do you agree, Neha, or are there others that you'd like to highlight? Melinda, maybe come to you first.
I think that a mentoring system or a coach between women is a very useful way of engendering confidence amongst women, particularly say women that are a bit older, a bit more progressed in their careers, to share their experiences and insight with those coming up behind them, to give them the confidence that they need to have that aspiration. So for me, that's one of the ways in which barriers can be overcome.
That links to the point you made, I think, about role models. Are there enough role models around the I suppose across procurement generally to encourage people to come through? I'm interested. What's your view, Claire, on that?
I think there's quite a few role models out there, but going back to what Melinda was saying, I think it's sharing your experiences as well, because I know when I've done any discussions or talking at a senior level regarding females in the sector, they're always interested, and what Maha said about how you manage to cope with bringing up a family, having children, and people are really interested in that. They automatically think that they can't progress in their careers if they've got children. And people always seem interested. So when I started out, I had children relatively young, so sort of in my mid-20s, and managed to progress my career through. And people tend to, want to look at people that have managed to progress, do the family, go to university, and get to that level. So I think it's important to share what we do, Duncan.
And I think linked to that, you say sharing is showcasing it. And I know SIPS, we've been running some really good events about women in procurement in different parts of the regions, just to try and do exactly that, which is talk about what can be done and how can we get there. And Conception, I mean, anything you want to add to that?
The idea that role models should be everywhere, and it's not just about gender. And it's this kind of people that you see at making a difference in the world. And I always trying to relate to them and say, what have they done differently? And very often it's about how many obstacles they see in front of them, and they're not worried, they dare and they do it. And I think that's really something, strong message for women, is to dare and not feel afraid that people are going to tell you, no, you can't do it. I think the only person that actually is telling you that is yourself. And I think it doesn't matter about the gender. It's really the strong model are really here to help us every day.
And if you take the construction sector, I mean, that's probably more male dominated than maybe the IT and telecom sector. And I think both Claire and Conception, you're both in that environment. I mean, do you see, you talk about their daring and pushing yourself forward. And I think that's made the same point about pushing for the leadership roles. I mean, do you see that within construction as being a real challenge?
I think it's getting better. There is it is a challenge because you've naturally got more males that are going into that space, so you haven't got the pool of people. So naturally, generally, when people coming out of school going into construction, it does tend to be male orientated. So we need to do more work to encourage females into there and to make them aware it doesn't have to just be a male environment.
And maybe just linked to that, Claire, I mean, maybe a question about encouraging women to come into procurement and choose it as a career choice, if you like. I mean, how do you think we can encourage and attract more women to sort of enter the profession itself?
Yeah, and I think we need to start at the real bottom. So we need to do more engagement at schools, at universities, at careers fairs to actually show that it is an actual opportunity, a role for women of the future. Because if we haven't got that pool of people coming in at the bottom, we are never going to have that pool of people at the top to choose from. So it's got to be at real grassroots and maybe. You know, before you get to A levels, maybe it's sort of lower down in the schooling system, so people actually understand there are lots and lots of opportunities for females and other diversity included backgrounds to go into procurement. It's not just men into that sector.
I think it's very interesting. I think whenever I talk to anyone in procurement, which I have done for many, many years, you know, whether people chose it as a career in the first place or whether they fell into it. I don't know. I mean, did any of you choose it early on in your career? Or
yeah, I can maybe mention. I was actually in sales 5 years ago, and I was asked by one of my first manager at Ericsson. She happens to be a female as well, and she asked me whether I would be interested to join procurement, and I felt like this is great. You know, I can sit on the other side of the table for once and be a customer. Why not? Let's try that. And I think that's the point I wanted to make as well in terms of attracting more women. We really need to attract, we need to think, you know, we need to recruit for potential, not only for experience. And that's, I think, goes across, by the way, not only for bringing in more women, but diversity in general. We shouldn't be too, you know, so we need to be a bit braver to say that, you know, it doesn't have to be someone who's been 10 years in the profession already. It could be someone with a great attitude and fantastic experience elsewhere who can bring in new perspectives to this function. And this is exactly what happened for me 5 years ago when I joined sourcing.
Yeah.
So Melinda, you going to add something?
Yeah, I was just thinking that, you know, we really ought to do more media campaigns, perhaps in women's magazines and things like that, to raise the profile more broadly across you know, across business generally. But also, you know, I've often said that we should go to schools, as Claire said, and colleges and things like that, and I think we do that. But I'm just thinking about other ways in which we could raise the profile of the profession more broadly across society, and perhaps, you know, different media routes could do that. I'm thinking of things like Stylist magazine and things like that.
I want to raise self-conception. Did you choose procurement early on?
I actually did, but I'm very lucky as a French person. I went into business school, and procurement was part of the various classes you had to take at the same level as finance or sales or anything else. So I was lucky that it's something I decided to do. But quite a funny story. Recently, one of my colleagues actually commented about the lack of diversity with our sales team. So people that we face every day, obviously, when we work with our suppliers, and they were saying there's barely any women actually in their profession. We've done so well in procurement, and it would be actually good to see also the sales profession doing as well as we did.
That's a really good comment, actually, but also there's an interesting dynamic between sales and procurement, anyway, isn't it? And I've often sort of felt that sometimes getting away from the almost like the same people talking to the same people about the same things, that diversity actually does sometimes encourage a better conversation and maybe a bit more sort of stimulate some different ideas that come from that. So Melinda, maybe I can come to you. I mean, if you think about the environment we need to create to allow women to really reach their full potential. I mean, I know within government there's been a strong drive to do this over a number of years, and you're obviously a great example of that. But how do we go about doing that? How do you create that culture?
Well, I think culture needs addressing at all levels in an organisation. Managers need to consistently communicate the agreed culture and role model those behaviours relentlessly, you know, the behaviours that they want to see. I'm gender champion for the government commercial function, and I want to create a culture where women can thrive and move up the career ladder. I'm also here supporting men, of course, too, and want to support men in the government commercial function to work flexibly to enable them to support their partners to take on more responsibility at work. I think this issue has been brought into sharp focus really through the pandemic, with women shouldering much of the day-to-day domestic responsibility, what with homeschooling and caring for older parents and other older people in the community, actually, I've heard, and trying to work and maintain a career at the same time. So I think what we really need is more equity at home as well as in the workplace to create a fairer society for all. So I've worked with women for decades, encouraging women to reach the full potential. And I've seen firsthand the tendency for women to suffer from imposter syndrome. And that's really thinking, I'm not good enough for this role. Never mind about thinking about the next rung up the ladder. So, and women have told me that they don't feel they can apply for promotion unless they can evidence, or indeed a job that they've seen, unless they can evidence that they meet all the criteria for the job, whilst men often just are more willing to give it a go. And women have told me that they don't feel, you know, confident, and confident is a great part of success. In fact, if you can't be confident in yourself, then it's really hard to instill that confidence in others. And so we need to work on building confidence by positively affirming, giving credit, you know, for work that's done, helping to raise a woman's profile in the workplace and indeed more broadly, and just empowering women to go for it. I've also seen that women take rejection far more to heart than men tend to do. And I'm speaking generally here, and it doesn't, you know, it's not black and white in that way, but the feedback that I've had over the years from women that I've worked with and known is that they, you know, they've opened up to me and said they do feel it a lot harder than men tend to do. And so I like the term fail forward. And it's really about saying that failure is all part of growing and developing, and it's a good experience in a funny sort of way. And it's about moving forwards to the next step. So as a champion, you know, I will be encouraging all women and men for that matter to just keep moving forward no matter what happens. But a key point I really wanted to make is about aspiration. And women have for far too long really not aspired to go further, or even, you know, as far as they could, or in fact should. And I also recognise, and I think we should all recognise, that it's okay for anyone at different points in their life to take the pedal off the gas in terms of the career. They might have other priorities. We talked earlier, didn't we, about children and families and other things people have to do, and that's fine, I think, to take your foot off the gas in that regard. But that doesn't mean to say that you can't get it back on as soon as the opportunity arises. And again, it's coming back to confidence and aspiration, and encouraging women to start thinking again about how far do they want to go and can go. But I think, you know, at the same time, we have to respect the fact that not everybody wants to get to the top, or even, you know, that part of the life isn't especially important to them. They just want to do a really good job at the level that they're at, and I think we have to respect that too. So, you know, I think not wanting to progress your career and not daring to are two different things. And I think what we need to be doing is encouraging people to dare to do it. So I think we have a collective responsibility really as leaders to give women a push to raise their personal aspirations beyond the wildest dreams. And so I'm here to champion that for the government commercial function. And what I really hope is that more of us can share our journeys and our experiences, both good and bad, to, you know, foster greater hopes and aspirations for those coming up behind us.
Mm-hmm. Can I add to that, Duncan? I think a lot of, I mean, I reckon everything that Melinda said, a lot of really, really good and relevant points. And I just want to share a little bit my own story, actually. I think one thing that I talk a lot to women about that I mentor is the feeling of guilt, because women tend to have that a lot more than men. And I'm generalizing again, but this is the cases I've seen, and I can just relate to it myself. Is especially when you get to a point in your life and you want to have a family, you want to build a family, you want to have children, it's more difficult for women to leave their kids at home and go to work and spend those hours that are really needed for you to be successful. Put those hours in. You have that constant push, you know, between pull and push, you know, of guilt between should I, you know, I haven't spent enough time at work, I haven't spent enough time with my kids. And it's there every day, you know, and it's really, really difficult to manage that, I think, as a woman. My child was 3 months old when I was promoted to the job I have today. He was 3 months and I had to leave him. I brought my mom to support me to take care of him because I was traveling most of the time. I managed 60 countries in our market area before the travel restriction obviously kicked in, which, by the way, is a fantastic opportunity now, I think, for women to really rise to the challenge. You know, working from home is, I see, actually an opportunity for women to progress in their careers, because it's a kind of given us an opportunity to balance that, you know, work and life, the personal life at the same time. But that feeling of guilt, I think we need to work on a lot and support each other with it, because just because you're doing your job, you know, doesn't mean you're being a bad mother. And I think that's really important. And if you are successful and feeling happy and fulfilled, your kids will see that as well and be happy as well in their lives. You will give them a great example. So I think that point is more probably important than we think, and it's that soft part that we don't often speak about, but that women struggle with daily, I think.
It's a really good point, and I think there's a couple of questions have come in around that as well. It was around sort of I think you touched on it, Melinda, about, you know, it's okay to take your foot off the pedal at times, but then are people almost like discriminated against because they have gone short-term working or they have been looking after their family, and then when they want to come back, does that hold them back? I suppose is part of the is always part of that challenge there, isn't it, in terms of the perception that you know, you can work effectively and you can get back into the full front line when you're ready to.
I think this is where culture comes into it. You know, I'm very much for flexible working, smart working, you know, part-time working. Job shares are a great idea to enable, you know, you get more than 2 people, you sort of get 2 times the amount of work. So it's great from an employer's point of view, but it allows people to have that work-life balance when they're looking after young children or whatever other responsibilities they've got. And culture, I think, as leaders, we ought to be saying, you know, can I have a job share for this particular post I'm advertising? Can we take part-time? And just, you know, think about the role. It doesn't have to be full-time, full-on necessarily. As I say, there's many options to build a culture to afford women and indeed men the opportunity to do a good job and progress their careers, and also look after everything else they need to do. So,
and maybe Conception, if I could bring you in for a minute on here. I mean, from a you chose procurement as a profession, which is great. But if you're thinking about within the profession and our roles and so on, I mean, what do you think we could do to really encourage more of this as we go forward?
As a profession, we keep on asking everyone around us to be ethical, to be diverse, to be inclusive. I think that's part of the culture in procurement, and we've always been pushing for the agenda with our supply chain and internally. I think because we take it at heart and that's something so important in profession, we have a responsibility to live by our values. And if we ask everyone to be diverse, then we also have to be diverse as a profession. I also think that when you start to look at us as managers or employees as well, we have responsibility and of behaving the way we actually ask everyone else to behave. And I think there is an issue around the fact that we always look at performance. Women will always think performance is the reason why I will be promoted next. And that's not actually what is always happening. And we have to face it. If I was doing a tender and I was doing exactly the same thing we do sometimes for promotion, I think I will be in trouble and be told that I'm not ethical. But actually, there's still a lot of promotion that comes around networking. And I think we should challenge it. And we should not be afraid to say we should stop this kind of practice. Because ultimately, and that's my own opinion, I believe that things should be based on how well you perform and your own behavior, and how well you can do for the next role, not the fact that actually behind the scene there's a lot of discussion happening. And also a problem for women is very often they're not involved in this discussion. And we've been very often told that, well, you need to do more networking, you need to get into this discussion. I actually think we should not, because I don't think that's the right way of doing it.
Thank you. I'm just looking at some of the questions that's coming through as you're talking as well, and there's one here that talks about positive discrimination. You know, there's someone who got a role and they were on a short list and they were asked that there should only be women on that short list for the role. I mean, what's your views on that? Do you think that's the right thing to do from the perspective of trying to encourage it? And that's an open question. I mean, it's always an interesting dynamic in any part of culture and diversity about that. But what do you think about that? What's that positive discrimination if people are looking for people into maybe a senior procurement role?
I can start, if that's okay. I would say that it's always, in the end of the day, it's what the results you want to achieve. All studies show that diversity improves output, right? In the end of the day, it's good for business. So we're not doing this out of charity, really, or you know, to be nice to each other, although of course that should be part of it as well. But as a business, we do it because we really believe that it will improve our profits. So if that is the case, then I'm for it, actually. If it doesn't happen by itself naturally through pushing it through the right tone, setting the right tone from the top, I can just mention from my own function in the past 3 years, we managed to increase gender diversity to actually 50%, and our senior leadership team now within my function from when it was around 16% when I joined. So it is possible to do it without enforcing it. But if it doesn't happen, and we have been talking about it for many, many years, then I think we should apply it.
Yeah, if I might come in the government commercial function, you know, we've grown our senior women cadre exponentially in recent years. I can remember a time when it virtually was all men in senior positions, and we did that by reaching out amongst our networks to women in the function in other organisations and industries and saying, come and give it a go. So we did sort of positively engage, but for me, I think at the end of the day, it's whoever is best for the job on the day, meeting the criteria that you're looking for. But that doesn't mean to say that we can't, you know, put our arms around women and encourage them to feel confident to apply, and ensure that the panels as well are inclusive in every respect. It's not just about gender, so that we do, you know, work towards having a properly diverse workforce.
I'm very conscious that we've actually just taken up half an hour, and we probably could carry on for at least another 10 or 15 minutes on this, and there are some really good questions that have come through that we haven't been able to get to. But Claire, maybe you can just bring you in on that sort of positive discrimination or diversity piece. I mean, what's your final perspective on that? And then I think we're going to have to wrap this up.
Yeah, I think just listen to both sides, but I think what Melinda's just concluded, you've got to have the right person for the role, and so you can't just go and you can expand your female network and you can bring them through the ranks, but you've got to have that right person for the role. We don't want to be just, it's got to be a mandate. It has to be a female or a male or a different background. I think they've got to be the right person. And to make sure we get more females into that right person role, it's again making sure that we've got through the pool of people, through the background, through the education. So we have got a real pool to choose from, and we're not just looking at a female because that's what we need to say as part of our statistics.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. I am afraid we're going to have to wrap this up. I think all I would say there's lots of questions that have come in. Please do continue to share those on the general chat within the conference room. There are also women in procurement activities that I know SIPS has been pushing, and we've been pushing in other regions as well. So if you want to get engaged and maybe ask the network or build your network up, I'd encourage you to do that as you go through. But I'm just delighted we had a brilliant session here. So Melinda, Conception, Maha and Claire, thank you very much for your contributions today. Hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. I think we're now into a break. I think the next session starts at 1 o'clock, or UK time. So please carry on and do your networking. And thank you very much for what a brilliant discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.